Welcome to Environmental Fridays. It is Personal, Season 2. You can learn more about our topics and speakers by joining our Environmental Fridays Facebook group. This series is brought to you by Best Early, the Benton Spirit Community Newspaper, Andrews University Community Engagement Council, GC Scored, Every Piece Matters. Introducing your host, Dr. Desmond Hartwell Murray, and this week's co-host, Darina Kalunich, Motria Kodel. This week on Environmental Fridays, we'll be hearing from Olena Krivichenko, Alexei Vasiliuk, Pavlo Tikachenko.
Okay, good morning, everyone. Welcome to Environmental Fridays. It is personal. This is season 2. And my name is Desmond Murray. I'm an associate professor of chemistry at Andrews University. I don't usually say that, but I guess we have new people on today. So I just wanted you to know. And we'd like you to visit our website, www.theenvironmentalfridays.com, to get a lot more information about Environmental Fridays. It is personal. Next week, we will actually have a lecture by Dawn. I just saw Dawn come online, Dawn Johnson. She will be talking to us about finding environmental solutions in Haiti. So that's what's coming up next week, Friday, at the same time, same place. Finding environmental solutions in Haiti. I'd like to introduce my co-hosts today, 2 co-hosts, Dania.
It's Darina.
Darina. So Darina is a junior here at Andrews University, currently studying animal science, pre-vet. She's hoping to become a vet in the future to help animals in need. Some of her hobbies are hiking, running outside, going to the gym, caring for houseplants, and cross-stitching. She and her family migrated to the United States about 8 years ago, before the 2014 conflict in Ukraine. And she says she still has a lot of family back in Ukraine, and some of them are currently even serving in the territorial defense. Our next co-host is Dr. Motria Cordell. She has been an environmental health scientist for over 25 years with the federal government. She spent her career assessing environmental data to learn whether people's health could be affected by contaminants in drinking water, in the soil, and in the air. She helps communities in public health emergencies, for example, hurricane response. And her work has taken her around the world to places like India, Vietnam, Ukraine, to conduct research, and train local specialists. She holds a PhD and a MS, master's degree in environmental and occupational health sciences from the University of Illinois at Chicago School of Public Health. And she teaches here at environmental health at Andrews University in Berrien Springs, Michigan. Without Motria, this episode would not exist, would not happen. We started talking about it a long time ago, about bringing in Ukraine and the Ukrainian audience. This was even before the war. And so it's something we've been talking about. And now, because of her efforts, her connections, we are able to have this Environmental Fridays. At this point, what I'd like us to do is to spend 1 minute of silence, in memory of those who have been lost and for the safety and blessings upon the people of Ukraine. 1 minute of silence, please. Okay, so at this time, Dorina, would you offer a prayer for us?
Yeah, for sure. Let's bow our heads down. Dear God, thank you so much for this week. Thank you that it's over. Please bless the weeks coming forth. Help the conflict in Ukraine. Help it to resolve peacefully, God. Please bring wisdom to the leaders. Help us to learn something today during this meeting, something useful for us. Thank you for bringing all these people. Bless them, God. Thank you so much. Amen.
Amen. Okay, thank you so much, very much. Just a statement I'd like to make before we introduce our speakers. I think it is important that the environmental cost of war should be part of our discussion. I don't think it has really made the mainstream media, not as much. And for good reasons, I guess. We focus on the loss of human life. Environmental damage, however, occurs to our air or water, land, plant, and animal life, and this should not be a side issue or an afterthought when considering the total atrocities of war. I believe that the impact of war is on the environment is inescapably personal, and war essentially weaponizes the environment, both in the short term and in the long term. In this particular unprovoked war, we confront the twin evils, not only of genocide, but also ecocide. And so we thank our guest speakers today for agreeing to give us this exclusive look into the environmental consequences of war. Originally, our Environmental Fridays was meant to mentor the next generation about the environment. That was the original purpose, but it has grown beyond that, beyond the classroom. And it's now, we have audiences across the United States, the Caribbean, and other places. For example, today, as in Ukraine. Not gonna go over all of what I normally do. I would now invite Motria to introduce our guest speakers for today.
Thank you. I'd like to thank our speakers for joining. And Dr. Murray's correct. We have been talking about making Environmental Fridays more international and considering how to include Ukrainians in just as general participants. And then especially once the war started, he reached out and asked if we could find some speakers. And at first it was, of course, not realistic because the people that I knew in Kiev and elsewhere were trying to figure out where they could go to protect their safety and whether they needed to leave, whether they could stay. And so for those first few weeks, it was not realistic, but people have, their work is important and they found ways to continue their work and to adapt to the realities. And so I'll tell you briefly about our three speakers, and woven into their presentations about their organizations and their usual typical work is how they've responded to the realities of war and how they're continuing and adapting their work. First, we have Olena Kravchenko. She's the executive director of the non-government organization Environment, People, Law, EPL. She's the lawyer and chief editor of the EPL Journal. EPL is a public interest environmental law organization. It was founded in the early 1990s, right around the time of Ukrainian independence when the Soviet Union fell apart. EPL works to protect environmental rights and create changes in the Ukrainian judicial and legal systems. EPL has been documenting the harms caused by the war in Eastern Ukraine since it started 2014. And now since the broader Russian invasion began February 24th, 2022, EPL is tracking attacks on critical infrastructure, for example, bombing of oil depots, pipelines, and warehouses, as well as damage to national parks and forests. Our second speaker, Dr. Oleksiy Vasiliuk, is director of the Ukrainian Nature Conservation Group. He's a zoologist at the Schmalhausen Institute of Zoology of the National Academy of Sciences of Ukraine and director of the UNCG. This organization unites scientists, experts, and public activists to promote biodiversity and conservation, including the establishment of new nature reserves in the country. Many UNCG biologists are internally displaced in Ukraine currently. They've been forced to put aside their usual duties to save reserve workers in occupied territories and to provide food for animals. And then our third speaker, Mr. Pavlo Tkachenko, is co-founder of Save Dnipro and Save Ecobot. He's a computer scientist educated at Dnipro National University. He's co-founder of Save Dnipro, an NGO fighting for a clean and safe environment in Ukraine. He's also co-founder and developer of Save Ecobot, the only environmental chat box in Ukraine. Save Ecobot displays real-time environmental data throughout Ukraine, including radiation sensors, which have attracted international attention since Chernobyl and other nuclear plants have come under attack. So these are our three speakers. And Ms. Kravchenko had slides that I can pull up. Okay, Dr. Murray, do you have the slide up?
Yes, the slide, we can see it.
Okay.
Do you want to do full screen or you're okay with the slide? There you go.
Can I start?
Yes.
Please go ahead.
Hello, everybody. It's my pleasure to represent some small results about war impact for environment and to share my knowledge and my thoughts and our plan, what we will do for the many years in the future with this problem. Motia, if you could translate from Ukraine, it would be good.
I'll do my best.
Please, next slide. Can we move to the next slide?
Yeah, we should have issue one, the beginning of the invasion.
Yeah. Motria, are you asking me to move the slide or what?
I moved it forward.
Спробуйте ще раз запустити презентацію.
It's still on the first.
Okay.
There you go.
Yeah.
There you go.
Oh, okay.
З першого дня війни почалися обстріли найбільших міст України.
From the very beginning of the invasion, the Russians were bombing and shooting at some of the largest cities in Ukraine.
І ці бомбардування, масовані бомбардування нанесли величезну шкоду інфраструктурі.
And as a result, they caused significant damage to infrastructure.
Також з перших днів війни почалися людські жертви мирного населення, в першу чергу жінок і дітей.
And also from these very first days, there were fatalities among the civilian population, in particular women and children.
І станом на зараз Маріуполь нараховує понад 20 тисяч вбитих мирних жителів російською армією.
Currently, the estimates are that the city of Mariupol has sustained fatalities of about 20,000 peaceful citizens at the hands of the Russian army.
Не одна тисяча вбитих або тяжко поранених є в Харкові і в Чернігові.
In the cities of Kharkiv and Chernihiv in the north on the Russian border, they each have no less than 1,000 fatalities or severely injured people.
Одна із найбільших трагедій трапилася в Бучі. Це невеличке місто біля Києва.
One of the greatest tragedies occurred in the small town of Bucha near Kyiv.
Сьогодні я зараз якраз по дорозі їду з Бучі, де ми надаємо гуманітарну допомогу тим, хто залишився. Мені на очі попалося понад 400 домовин з тих людей, які були закатовані, і які або просто лежали на вулиці, або були загорнуті землею, і зараз їх намагаються поховати за християнським чином.
Today, Ms. Kravchenko is out in the field. She was delivering humanitarian aid to people who are in Bucha. And with her own eyes, she saw along the lines of 400 people who had been tortured and killed and who were either at the side of the road or some simple burial was made for them.
І ці люди не просто були вбиті, а проходили через великі тортури, зґвалтування, і гвалтувалися дітки від декількох тижнів, декількох місяців до жіночок поважного віку за 70 років.
And these people were not simply killed, they were tortured. There have been documented rapes of even ranging from young children to women of all ages, even to senior citizens in their 70s and 80s.
І в цій трагедії екологи, юристи-екологи мають також піднімати і питання знищення довкілля, і через призму людської трагедії і геноциду екологам, активістам, юристам-екологам вкрай тяжко піднімати цю тему так, щоб вона звучала доволі голосно, публічно.
And within this context, it's the role of lawyers, activists, environmental scientists to document the ecocide and the harm to the natural environment. And it's difficult to raise these issues and to get them acknowledged within the broader scheme of what is happening.
Але це наше покликання. Ми бачимо в цьому мету подальшої нашої діяльності, тому що для нас довкілля є такою ж самою мовчазною жертвою, як і маленькі дітки, як старенькі люди, як будь-хто із людей, хто був закатований.
But this is our calling. It is our role to give voice both to the mute victims, the children, the people of Ukraine, as well as the environment, which is suffering now.
Yeah. Environmental is for us like silent victim, and we have to protect this environment and to help to rebuild, to make restoration Ukrainian environment. Please, next slide.
Territories and objects of the Nature Reserve Fund. Is it up?
Yeah, exactly. Якщо брати, війна почалася в Україні, війна почалася не 24 лютого 2022 року. Вона почалася в середині березня 2014 року.
The war did not actually begin in 2022, but it's been going on since 2014.
І довкілля почало страждати ще з тих часів. І якщо ми говоритимемо про об'єкти природно-заповідного фонду, то варто згадати і Кримський півострів, який був захоплений в 2014 році.
And it's been for these 8 years that the environment in Ukraine has been suffering, and we should point out in particular the natural areas of the illegally occupied Crimean Peninsula.
І в 2014 році Україна втратила понад 50% об'єктів природно-заповідного фонду із багатою флорою і фауною, великою кількістю червонокнижних рослин і тварин.
Beginning with this war in 2014, a large portion, about 44% of the natural preserve areas in Ukraine are in war zones in occupied territories, including a very high density of biodiversity and in rare plants and animals.
І з середини, з 24 лютого вже 22 року, із тієї території, яка залишилася, природно-заповідного фонду, знову ж таки під або розгромленою, або під окупацією виявилося до 40%, як наші колеги, Олексій буде більш детальніше говорити про це, але понад 40% території природно-заповідного фонду, вже не враховуючи окупований Крим, також зараз або постраждали, або страждають від наслідків війни.
As my colleague Alexei will explain more, since not counting the Crimean and other territories that have been occupied for years, but the territory that has been bombed and attacked since March of this year, about 44% of this area has been occupied and attacked by bombing.
Це, я не буду на тому детально зупинятися, Олексій вам про це розкаже. Єдине, що хочеться сказати, наголосити на чому, що неймовірно страждає узбережжя Азовського і Чорного морів і безпосередньо екосистеми Азовського і Чорного моря.
My colleague Alexei will elaborate more on this, but I just wanted to highlight some of the most significant areas that are being affected are the rare territories along the Black Sea and the Azov Sea.
Yeah, we can move and next slide. It's about it will be about national protection areas. Thank you. І екосистеми Азовського і Чорного морів особливо страждають від бомбардування узбережжя Одеської і Миколаївської областей.
Some of the areas that are suffering now are around the cities of Odessa and Mykolaiv in southern Ukraine.
І шкоду, нанесеним морським екосистемам Азовського і Чорного моря, зараз практично неможливо проаналізувати. І це одне із перших завдань, одне із перших повоєнних завдань з'ясувати, наскільки є пошкодженими морські екосистеми Чорного і Азовського морів.
Some of these areas we don't currently have access to, and so we cannot even assess, and it will be one of our most important roles when we win the war to characterize the harm that has been done to the water systems of the Black Sea and the Azov Sea.
Please, next slide. And it's also about national protection areas. Next slide.
We have fires and technological objects.
Yeah, fires and technologicals. Next, it's also about protection areas, fires and technological objects. Yes, thank you.
And radiation.
Але якщо розібратися із тим, яка шкода нанесена морським екосистемам, яка шкода безпосередньо нанесена цим понад 40% об'єктів природно-заповідного фонду, достеменно неможливо, то проаналізувати вплив від техногенних катастроф можна.
I'm sorry, can you repeat that?
We cannot analyze deeply situation with damage of ecosystem of Azov and Black Sea, but we can analyze situation with fires and bombing and the impact for environment from technogenic catastrophe. Проаналізовано нами спільно із нашими колегами із природоохоронної групи відстежено понад 30 бомбардувань нафтових баз або лакофарбних складів чи фабрик.
They have been able to document the bombing of about 30 fuel depots and other types of warehouses of flammable materials.
І зараз по кожному із цих кейсів бомбардування, саме бомбардування нафтових баз підпадає чітко під визначення статті 8.2 Римського статуту.
And attacks on these types of objects is a violation of the Roman statutes. Can you say more about what that statute is?
It's statute for international criminal law. This Rome statute has Article 8.2. This article about damage of environment, crime of environment. І наші юристи проаналізували повністю Римський статут, процедуру подачі справ до Римського статуту, і всі бомбардування нафтових баз підпадають під визначення злочини проти природи.
So our team with our legal and international specialists, we were able to evaluate whether these attacks fall under those that description in the Rome statute, and we have confirmed that these are these actions do violate the statute.
International National Environmental Inspectorate or Enforcement already calculated and analyzed this damage, and we are working together with National Environmental Enforcement, and we are prepare cases to apply to International Criminal Court in Hague. And it will be a good precedent, because before this we cannot see cases in international criminal court where people are trying to protect especially environment, not human rights and genocide, but protect especially environment rights. Next slide, please. About forest.
Forest, okay. Forest fires.
Next forest 4. Also, також наша команда проаналізувала найбільші пожежі лісів в тих місцях, де велися бойові дії.
They've also documented the most significant areas of forests that have been affected by the bombing.
І також за допомогою за допомогою спільно з науковцями Міжнародного союзу охорони природи проводимо обрахування збитків, нанесених пожежами лісу.
And working, lawyers and international environmental protection specialists are working together to document the harms caused by the bombing and the fires that are occurring in forests.
І після завершення обрахунку нанесення шкоди знищенням лісу через пожежу будуть підготовлені наступні кейси до Міжнародного кримінального суду в Гаазі.
And this is another category of crimes against nature that we are documenting and will be bringing to the International Court in The Hague.
Ще однією із великих шкод, які задається довкіллю, є килимові бомбардування артилерії і ракетне бомбардування.
There's another category of rocket and widespread bombing that they're also documenting.
Шкоду від килимового бомбардування артилерією і ракетного бомбардування в першу чергу, окрім інфраструктури, звичайно, буде величезне забруднення ґрунтів.
Kilimove, it's like a carpet bombing, a blanket bombing. And that's in addition to the harming infrastructure and causing fires, it's also contaminating the soil.
Але порахувати шкоду, нанесену ґрунтам забрудненням, і порахувати об'єми цього забруднення станом на зараз неможливо, оскільки там ідуть активні бойові дії.
The characterization and assessment of this type of soil contamination is currently impossible because of the ongoing war activities.
Але після війни такі обстеження обов'язково мають бути, і після завершення аналізу нанесення шкоди ґрунтам має бути розроблена методика відновлення ґрунтів і обрахунок, скільки це буде коштувати.
But once the war is over, it will be engaged in activities to test and to characterize the contamination of soils, and then begins the process of remediating and cleaning up the site and estimating the costs associated with all of these efforts.
І ці кейси також мають стати, ці обрахунки нанесення збитку забрудненню ґрунтів також мають стати окремими складовими великого позову України в Міжнародному кримінальному суді.
And this characterization and estimates of the costs associated with soil contamination and cleanup, this will be an entire separate category of crimes that will be documented and brought to the International Court.
Звичайно, що величезна шкода нанесена і тваринному світу. Про тваринний світ, я впевнена, буде говорити Олексій. У них унікальний досвід із зоопарками, допомога зоопаркам. Єдине, що хочу сказати, що на території Київської області, Харківської області загинула велика кількість тварин в приватних зоопарках.
My colleagues, I expect, will have a lot more to say about the impacts on animals, but I also wanted to note that the bombing has caused the fatalities of many animals in private zoos in the northern cities of Ukraine that have been bombed.
І на завершення ще одна із великих проблем, якій не придається велика увага, не надається велика увага ні екологами, активістами, ні нашим урядом, це велика кількість трупів на тій території України, на якій ведеться активні бойові дії.
And a final issue to touch on is something that is not often addressed both by the environmental scientists and others, but the very number of bodies of killed people, the corpses that themselves do have a potential negative effect on the environment.
І проблеми тут є такі. Перше, представники Збройних сил Російської Федерації масово зараз почали спалювати тіла своїх солдат і вбитих мирних українців, не дотримуючись санітарних норм, що призводить до забруднення атмосферного повітря великою кількістю канцерогенних речовин.
So the Russian occupying forces they're not following appropriate safety standards, and they're incinerating their own war dead and also the killed civilians, and they're incinerating them is releasing large quantities of carcinogenic cancer-causing chemicals into the air.
І інша проблема, ті тіла, які закопуються, теж, власне, закопуються, а не здійснюється процедура поховання згідно санітарних норм, глибини, відстані, і це теж веде до забруднення, як мінімум, ґрунту.
And the bodies that are buried are not properly prepared, and the appropriate death and protocols are not followed. So at a minimum, there's contamination of the soil that's occurring.
Це я коротко окреслила основні напрямки, на яку звертають увагу наша команда, і по яких ми здійснюємо моніторинги крок за кроком, факт за фактом нанесення шкоди довкіллю.
And this is, I've briefly touched on the different areas that our team is working on to step-by-step document what has occurred and to build our case.
Що ми рекомендуємо собі і нашому уряду, і нашим міжнародним партнерам робити далі?
We have recommendations for our continued work and our partners in this area.
По-перше, вже потрібно ініціювати створення центру оцінки впливу війни на довкілля при Офісі президента.
The first step is at the level of the Office of the President to establish an office to investigate the effects of the war on the environment.
Yeah, Center of Environmental Impact of War. Цей центр потрібен для того, щоб підняти рівень уваги до проблеми нищення довкілля в суспільстві в цілому.
This type of work is necessary to bring awareness to the general public about the harms to the environment that have occurred.
Оскільки зараз в Україні практично, окрім нас, природоохоронної групи і ще декількох екологічних організацій, тема впливу війни на довкілля практично не висвітлюється і не вважається головною.
The effects of the war on the environment is something that is not acknowledged. It's not something the general public is aware of, and it's not widely considered to be a priority issue.
Друге, війна застала систему формування природоохоронного законодавства в процесі покращення, але наше природоохоронне законодавство має цілу низку шпарин для корупційних схем, для неправильного використання фінансування довкіллєвої сфери.
I think you're saying that they already exist. There are laws against misuse of the environment and harms to the environment.
Ukrainian environmental legislation has a lot of gaps, and these gaps some people can use to build some corruption schemes. So we don't have special fund for environmental issues. And the second recommendation is to establish special fund for environment, for restoration environment after war. Третя проблема. На національному рівні уряд має налагодити системну роботу і обмін інформацією між Космічним агентством України і НАСА.
Third recommendation is to initiate cooperation between the Ukrainian Space Agency and the United States NASA for continued analysis of the impacts.
Це потрібно для того, щоб Україна не має достатньої кількості власних супутників, ми користуємося супутниками інших країн, і аналітики, які аналізують космознімки, не завжди мають можливість доступу до якісних космознімків, саме чітко визначених територій, які вони хочуть проаналізувати, і подивитися через космознімки, яка шкода була нанесена довкіллю, саме чіткі території і в чіткі визначені дні.
Ukraine does not have many of its own satellites. It largely makes use in cooperation with other countries and their satellites. So it will be important to document high resolution images of the areas that have sustained environmental damage, and to be able to document these attacks, and also to specify the dates of when these damages occurred.
І також необхідно більш активно на національному рівні і Міністерству захисту довкілля України, і, ймовірно, майбутньому центру оцінки впливу війни на довкілля, який би був при президенті, активніше залучати міжнародних експертів до обрахунку нанесення шкоди довкіллю.
It will be important to cooperate with international experts at this, together with this center at the president's level, to document not just the crimes, but the costs of the harm and the costs of the remediation of these contaminated areas.
Оскільки станом на зараз Україна не має жодного експерта, ми не володіємо жодною сучасною методикою нанесення обрахунку шкоди довкілля, яке постраждало внаслідок війни, в різних всіх цих напрямках, які я озвучувала раніше, і міжнародний досвід Україні в розробці legislation був би корисний, і в підготовці на основі цих розроблених нормативних актів допомогти нам в підготовці позовів до Міжнародного кримінального суду.
Ukraine does not currently have experts in the field of estimating the costs of crimes against nature and cleanup costs of the remediation. So these there will need to be laws passed and policy determined to support that long effort of documenting and bringing forth the crimes to the international courts.
Yeah. And it would be good if Ukraine could invite different international experts from IUCN, from compensation committee for people who worked in compensation committee in Kuwait, compensation committee in Syria, compensation committee in Albania, Sudan, Nicaragua, etc. The experience is very important for us and will be so useful. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Kravchenko. I think we'll save questions. And how much time do we have for our other speakers, Dr. Murray?
So we try to get done with the speakers at around 10:30 and then have questions and answers after that. So we have just about 10 minutes.
Okay, I don't want to shortchange them too much. Okay, so I have unshared. Dr. Vasilyuk?
Так, доброго дня. Чи добре мене чутно?
We hear you well, yes.
Окей. Я представляю організацію Українська природоохоронна група, і ми всі біологи. Ми всі фахівці, які розбираються в екосистемах і біорізноманітті.
I represent a group. We are all biologists. We all understand the natural world that we're working to protect.
І я зараз також є вимушеним переселенцем, але я виїхав у футболці з логотипом нашої організації. Ви можете побачити, що ми налаштовані на тяжку роботу, і навіть на нашому логотипі мурашка несе важку непосильну вагу.
I, like many of my colleagues, are internally displaced right now, but we have very significant, very heavy work that we're continuing to do. And as represented on our logo, on my t-shirt, we're like little ants that are carrying a very heavy load.
Але все, чим ми займалися, зараз практично втратило сенс, тому що ми планували створення нових природоохоронних територій, охорону тих, які є, і дослідження на біорізноманіття в природоохоронних територіях.
Our usual work is stopped making sense. It stopped being possible to continue. Our typical activities involve the establishment and national approval of nature reserves and protection of biodiverse areas.
І тому зараз, коли почалась війна, наша робота повністю переформатувалася, стала зовсім іншою і направлена з одного боку також на документування змін у довкіллі, і друге на порятунок наших колег.
So now that the war has taken over our work and our activities have changed to document the damage to protected areas and to animals, and to do what we can to support workers in the parks, in the protected areas that are under occupation.
Дійсно, Олена Кравченко правильно сказала, що більш ніж 40% усіх національних парків і заповідників України опинилися під окупацією.
Ms. Kravchenko correctly stated that over 40% of protected areas and state parks are currently under Russian occupation.
Це не випадковість, тому що всі найцінніші території в нашій країні розташовані по її периферії.
And this is happening because most of the most significant and biodiverse territories within Ukraine are along its periphery.
А саме прикордонні райони в декількох регіонах захопила російська армія.
So there are many of these near border areas that have been captured by the Russian army.
І ми зараз намагаємось допомогти тим колегам, які залишилися під окупацією, тому що багато з них або не мають можливості виїхати, або не планують виїжджати, тому що бояться, що без них будуть втрачені ті природні об'єкти, над охороною яких вони працюють.
So we're striving to help our workers who are in these captured territories. Many of them either were unable to leave or they chose not to leave because they were concerned that if they were not there to help protect the territory and the animals, that they would receive further harm.
Я розкажу спочатку трохи про це, а потім про зміни в екосистемах.
So I'll say a little about that, and then I'll talk about the changes to the environment.
Найвідоміший біосферний заповідник в Україні – це Асканія Нова. Вона існує вже понад 100 років, і в ній працює 269 чоловік.
There are over 260 people who work in the Askania Nova Nature Reserve in southern Ukraine, which has been in existence for over 100 years.
Понад 100 років в цьому заповіднику копитних тварин з різних регіонів планети акліматизували, щоб вони могли жити на півдні України.
There are, beyond the native species here, they've brought animals from different parts of the world and acclimatized them to live in this area.
Завдяки цьому, коли зараз вже немає диких копитних на території України в степовій зоні, але дякуючи цим акліматизованим тваринам, в Асканії Нова зберігся справжній степ. Він навіть ця територія навіть не відчула, що дикі тварини копитні замінилися на акліматизованих.
So animals have been able to adapt to this territory and Можете сказати, що значить копитний?
Степ, grasslands.
Grasslands, okay. So these are animals that have adapted to the dry natural steppe of southern Ukraine.
І це означає, що саме Асканія Нова – це остання частина природних екосистем України, які дуже схожі на прерії Північної Америки. Це аналогічна екосистема, але лише тут, в Україні, вони збереглися в природному стані.
So this territory is analogous to the prairies of the United States, only here they've been preserved in their natural state.
Але якщо цей заповідник перестане працювати, то російські війська можуть всіх цих тварин, їх близько 1500, просто використати як м'ясо, а територію розорати і використати як поле.
If we're not able to protect this land, then these thousands of animals could, the Russian soldiers could potentially just eat them as if they're livestock, and they could potentially develop the land for farming and do with it whatever they want.
Тому всі працівники заповідника вирішили залишитися в ньому і не виїжджати з окупованої території.
And this is why the workers of this nature reserve have decided to stay and to protect it.
І, знаючи про цю ситуацію, ми почали кампанію допомоги їм. Тобто, ми почали збирати кошти для того, щоб допомогти цим людям на окупованій території.
So we have begun the effort to raise funds to protect these workers and their efforts to protect this territory.
На превеликий жаль, держава не може цього зробити, тому що наше Міністерство екології не може з одного боку прийняти donation, А з другого боку, воно не може сплачувати кошти на територію, яка окупована.
It's important for this group to raise the funds. They're able to do that because they are a non-government organization. The government of Ukraine that manages the national park, they are not able to accept foreign donations, and that's the first reason they're not able to help. And then the second is they are not allowed to work on occupied territory.
Тому останні 2 місяці Асканія Нова і інші національні парки окуповані підтримуємо ми, дякуючи людям, які долучаються до збору коштів.
And for this reason, we have stepped up to support this territory.
І ми громадська організація, тому на відміну від міністерства ми можемо просто прямо заплатити фермеру, який привезе корм для тварин, наприклад, або пальне для транспорту.
And because we are an NGO, we're able to directly pay for the food that is brought to the animals and for the fuel that's necessary to transport supplies.
Але з іншого боку, тобто виходить, що ми чекали, коли настане весна, щоб їхати в експедиції і вивчати біорізноманіття, а в результаті займаємося тим, щоб купувати пальне і зерно.
So our work was previously to study and to document the biodiversity and the rare species, and now we find ourselves buying fuel and feed for animals.
Але це лише частина проблеми, тому що багато працівників національних парків, які знаходяться в зоні бойових дій, вони перебувають в умовах гуманітарної кризи. У них зруйновані будинки, вони не можуть купити медикаменти і їжу.
And beyond that, our workers are in a humanitarian crisis. The buildings have been damaged, and they're unable to get medicines that are needed for the animals and any kind of supplies that they need.
І зараз один з національних парків, наприклад, базується в місті Маріуполь, про який тепер знає весь світ.
One of these parks that I'm speaking of is in the area of the city of Mariupol that everyone knows right now has been under siege for weeks.
Тому ми також допомагаємо працівникам національних парків, які змогли виїхати, покинути такі небезпечні зони, знайти тимчасове нове житло на безпечних територіях.
So people who have escaped from areas like Mariupol, the workers who are internally displaced, we're helping to find them a safe place to stay.
І кількох таких біологів, які змогли виїхати, ми тимчасово взяли працювати до себе в організацію, щоб вони мали на найближчий період таку роботу, яку вони насправді хотіли би. Саме роботу біолога.
Excuse me. And we're able to find work for these people so they could work within our organization and do the work of a biologist that they were trained to do.
І завершуючи цю частину, я лише додам, що найбільша кількість допомоги від простих людей, саме от внесків, на цей час надійшло саме зі Сполучених Штатів і з Канади.
And I'll just finish that the support we've received has been particularly strong from the United States. And people have been donating and supporting our efforts. And I'll share the link. I found it myself on the website, so hopefully we'll be able to distribute to this group. But that work has been supporting this group.
А тепер все ж таки про екосистеми. Тобто, звичайно, природа страждає від бойових дій. І це є і фізичне руйнування, і розлякування тварин вибухами і забруднення довкілля.
So a little about the animals. They've been physically injured. They've been frightened by the attacks, and it has disturbed their environment and access to food.
Але всі ці впливи, вони короткострокові. Тобто, якщо тварини загинули, вони загинули швидко. Якщо щось було забруднено і від цього хтось загинув, це сталося швидко. Якщо тварини налякалися і втекли з території там, де відбуваються вибухи або горить ліс, це теж відбувається швидко.
Some of these effects are very short term, very quick. So if an animal is killed, that happens on the short term versus damage and contamination to their habitat, which has a longer impact.
І нам цікаво бути готовими до того, як зміниться природа потім, з часом, а не одномоментно. Ми не можемо вплинути, ми не можемо захистити від бойових дій жодну тварину, жодну рослину, але ми можемо підготуватися до того, як буде змінюватися природа, коли війна завершиться.
So we're not able to affect those immediate impacts, but our concern is how we can support these animals and improve their environment over the long term.
І ми вважаємо, що на великих площах в Україні дуже можливо станеться значне відновлення природи там, де її вже не було.
And we're looking forward to the ability to renew natural lands after the war is over, potentially even in areas that were not previously nature reserves.
Тому що зруйновано багато населених пунктів. Дуже велика територія замінована. І згоріли ліси. І нарешті частина території поки що лишається окупованою.
So there's a lot of settled territories that have been damaged and forests that have been burned and territories that remain occupied.
Ми думаємо, що велика кількість людей не повернеться туди, де вони жили далі раніше, тому що більшість людей, які зараз покинули свої домівки, це люди, які працювали на промислових підприємствах, а вони зруйновані.
We think there's some areas where people will not ever return because they left a community where they worked in a factory, they worked in a plant that has been destroyed, and so they don't have a job to return to.
Всього в Україні покинули свої домівки близько 14 мільйонів людей.
We're estimating that about 14 million people have left their homes in Ukraine.
І частина з них, зрозуміло, ми не знаємо, яка частина, але частина цих людей не повернеться додому.
And some fraction of these people will not ever go back home.
Тому також ми розуміємо, що відновлення інфраструктури буде відбуватися поступово, тому що руйнування просто неймовірні. Фактично, чверть площі України повністю зруйнована.
We're estimating that about a fourth of Ukrainian territory has been entirely destroyed at this point, and so it will be a long process to move forward and to rehabilitate some areas.
І попри неймовірну кількість людських трагедій, для природи це дасть певний шанс відновитися.
And despite these human tragedies, it's an opportunity potentially for the environment to be renewed.
І ми вже маємо два таких приклади. Один з них – це зона відчуження Чорнобильської атомної електростанції.
We have two examples where this has already been the case. One is the zone around the Chernobyl power plant.
30 років тому ця територія була населеними пунктами, полями, а за останні 30 років вона перетворилася на прекрасні дикі ліси, куди повернулися навіть великі хижі тварини.
So 30 years ago, the Chernobyl area, which is now called the exclusion zone, since the accident, it had many settled villages and farmlands, which since the people needed to be evacuated, there's been a return of wildlife, including large mammals.
І на сьогодні Чорнобильська зона є найбільшим в Україні лісом, який виріс сам собою, найбільшим природним лісом в Україні.
So now the Chernobyl zone is the largest natural forest in Ukraine.
Також на окупованій частині Донбасу на сході України за ті 8 років, поки там триває війна, місцеві жителі не мають можливості займатися полюванням.
Займатися чим?
Мисливством, хантінг.
Hunting.
Okay, so, and additionally in the eastern Ukraine and the Donbas area, for these past 8 years that the war has been going on, people have not been able to hunt.
І дякуючи цьому, велика кількість тварин дуже сильно збільшили свою чисельність.
And because of that, many animals have been able to increase their numbers.
І тому ми розуміємо, що коли зменшується кількість населення, коли зменшується тиск антропогенний на екосистеми, природа дуже стрімко відновлюється такою, можливо, навіть кращою, ніж ми її бачили раніше.
So we have seen when there are fewer people, when there's less human stress on the environment, the natural world is able to rebound.
І це нам дає певний шанс, коли Україна буде відновлюватися після війни, відновити її кращою, ніж вона була, грубо кажучи, до того.
And this is giving us hope that when we win the war, there are areas that will be able to recover their natural environment.
Але при цьому у нас є одне дуже велике застереження, тому що це застереження полягає саме в тому, що Україна вже зараз дуже серйозно готується до відновлення.
And we have one concern now that Ukraine is preparing and planning to renew itself.
І, зокрема, до України надходять великі кошти від інших держав призначені для відновлення, а тим часом державні органи одне за одним починають відміняти процедури оцінки та погодження нових проєктів.
So there's many funds that are being earmarked for renewal in Ukraine, for rebuilding, and different government entities and divisions are determining their plans to rebuild.
І ми розуміємо, що кошти для відновлення України будуть не з України, але матеріали, якими вона буде відновлюватися, камінь, пісок, деревина, цемент – це все наші сучасні екосистеми.
So we understand that the funds will be coming from abroad, but the materials, the wood, the stone, the sand for building these projects will be coming from our own resources.
Тому нас чекає дуже велике випробування. Нам доведеться після того, як Україна почне відновлення, якимось чином зробити так, щоб ту частину України, яку не зруйнували росіяни, не знищили самі українці, добуваючи корисні копалини. Якщо я не сильно складно сказав.
So this will be our challenge when we start to rebuild, to ensure that we're able to build these new projects without causing further damage to the environment in Ukraine by extracting these resources.
Тому так може статися, що сьогодні ми виглядаємо для держави вигідною організацією, і ми, і екологія права людина, яку очолює Олена Кравченко, ми зараз виглядаємо для держави вигідними організаціями, які розказують, як погано впливають росіяни на українську природу. Але завтра нам можуть сказати, що ми погані, тому що ми заважаємо Україні відновлюватися.
So currently, our group is working together with Ms. Kravchenko's organization to document the harms caused to the environment. So we are currently a positive force, but we're concerned that in the future we may be considered to be a negative influence because we're hampering and holding up this renewal and reconstruction.
Тому я дуже сподіваюся, що у наших керівників нашої держави вистачить мудрості не лише зупинити агресію Росії, а і вберегти Україну після того, тому що це також буде випробовування.
So I hope there's enough wisdom in our government to both allow us to end the war and to end the Russian occupation, and to allow us to move forward in building and protecting Ukraine.
Також я хочу сказати ще одну останню деталь. Оскільки бойові дії дуже активні і вже зруйновано близько 4 тисяч різних одиниць військової техніки, танків, різних ракетних установок. І таким чином по всьому периметру України зараз знаходяться уламки військової техніки.
One final point, I just wanted to draw attention to all of these thousands of Russian tanks and planes and vehicles and drones that have been destroyed on Ukrainian territory. And що ви там з кінця сказали?
Також, можна продовжити, вертольоти та літаки падали в лісах, в озерах, в море, і навіть великі військові кораблі горіли і тонули в Чорному морі.
So there are helicopters and airplanes and ships in the sea, and so they've fallen into the forests and they're sinking into the Black and the Azov Sea.
Кожен з цих об'єктів мав якесь пальне, і воно потрапляє в довкілля. Кожен з них мав боєприпаси, і вони також часто є токсичними, вони також попали в довкілля. І навіть кожне місце, де вибухав кожен снаряд, воно також забруднене.
So each of these objects, they're carrying fuel, they have ordnance, they have bombs, they have toxins of their own kind. And so wherever they land, they're contaminating that part of the environment.
І ми знаємо, що країни Балканського півострова після їхніх військових конфліктів до сьогоднішнього дня частину територій не використовують, тому що вони забруднені внаслідок бойових дій.
And we know from the example, we can learn from the example of the Bosnian war, there are some areas there that are simply too contaminated and that are not able to be used for human purposes.
З точки зору України було би повним безумством після завершення війни просто почати на територіях, де були бойові дії, просто вирощувати продукти харчування.
It's not realistic to think that the war is over and we can just go ahead and start planting our crops in some of these contaminated territories.
Тому ми сподіваємось, що принаймні частково вдасться зробити так, щоб ті території, де відбувалися бойові дії, були подаровані природі.
So some of these territories will not be realistic to use and will need to be returned back to the environment. Dr. Василюк, I think нам треба
Так. Це останнє, що я хотів сказати. Якщо в когось будуть питання, я зможу на них відповісти зараз або пізніше.
Okay. Yes. All right. So we thank you. We need at least a few moments for our last speaker. I'm sorry to shortchange you, Pavlo. Did you want to share a slide or website? Дякую.
Yes, I have slides, so I will share. Yes, my slides. Okay.
Dr. Murray, maybe 5 minutes.
Yeah, 5. if it's a real 5.
You mean for me 5 minutes? I have.
Is that okay?
Okay, so I will be pretty fast. Okay, so maybe I will skip something. Okay. Okay, so I don't need the translation. Thank you so much for invitation, and I will try to describe you our digital tool for personal and environmental protection. It's Safe Ecobot. Like 5 years ago, we were just regular citizens who was not involved at all in the environment, and but we were living together in city Dnipro, where the largest non-modernized coal thermal power plant was located, and it was very dirty without any modern filters for any emission. All emissions were inside of the air, and we started a long advocacy campaign against that private company owned DTEC. And after after 1 year, enterprise took obligation that they will invest near $40 million in the environmental modernization. And during that advocacy campaign, we got idea that why not to create a tool which will collect all the environmental related legal data, the information about air quality in one single tool, digital tool. So everybody will will know how to get the data about the enterprise. They will be able to follow the different procedures like environmental impact assessment. And it was long way, but we got multiple impacts. We were introducing our tool with different ministers of Ministry of Environmental Protection. We were presenting different new features. One of the hugest impact was that at the beginning, when we started in Ukraine in 2018, we had near 4 or 3 online air quality stations. And but on the beginning of the 2022, we have more than 600 online stations of air quality, and our tool has all the data together. We're aggregating and give to people access with easy and understandable tool like map, chatbot, and different else. We had also together with other environmental organizations huge influence on different authorities on local and state level by changing laws and meetings, like doing even some small reforms. We had a lot of partners. We had local, international, but then Russia started full-scale war. At morning of February 24th, I woke up with my family from a huge blast just near my building. I heard it. Then I even saw some fire, and we started moving out of Dnipro because Dnipro located close to the war area, to the active, and I decided that my family has to be safe and moved outside of the country. So we started driving, and 2 my colleagues, Artyom and Ilya Rybakov, decided they have to go to the army. And like you can see here on the slide that Artyom, he has a picture from the army, but I had no picture for Ilya, for my colleague, and I made a small collage just to show you that they are in the army and they're not able to protect the environment like we were doing in the past few years. And during the driving to Chernobyl, to my relatives, at night, I started getting messages and even calls from different people, and they were asking about the problem with background radiation in Ukraine. Because as I found next that Russian occupiers came to Chernobyl exclusion zone and occupied Chernobyl power plant, nuclear power plant. And immediately the subject about the radiation background in Ukraine became very popular, and not only in Ukraine, but in other countries. And people started searching background radiation Ukraine, and they came to our website because we had a landing page, a simple landing page for the background radiation with a map and all. At that time, what we had near 250 stations from where we were taking data. And as you can see, just on February 25th, we had 300,000 users on our website. That's the first day of the occupation of nuclear power plant, of Chernobyl nuclear power plant. So just a small page, which was translated in English with data about Ukraine, helped to people around the world to understand and see the real situation with the radiation background in Ukraine. We gave different comments to medias, to other people like specialists from universities, from Japan, from United States, United Kingdom, and other countries. And then I got idea, why not to find other sources of the data? And we started writing to enterprises, to local authorities, to state level authorities, to Ministry of Environment, and starting getting more data to our system, because we understood that authorities like ministry, they don't have resources for development, for fast development of a service. But that information is very important for now. And right now we tripled the amount of data sources. And if at the beginning of the full-scale war we had only 200.5 measurement points, now we have near 560, which are some online, some manual measurements, but still it's archive. We have all the archive, we have easy access. We also give access to all the data to other organizations with APIs, to specialists from universities, and they are doing their investigations. And the other new tool which we created for collecting reports of war crimes against the environment. So next day after the full-scale war, we got idea that we have to create a tool in our chatbot that in few clicks, every single Ukrainian or other people who are in Ukraine will be able to report war crimes against the environment. And after that, information will go to the Ministry of the Environmental Protection. We created that tool, 3 days, the prototype, delivered that information to the Ministry of Environmental Protection. They were like, wow, great that you made it so fast in few days. And we released that. And for right now, we have near 100 already environmental crimes reported around the Ukraine. And that information goes automatically to the headquarters of Ministry of Environmental Protection. So they have that information, they work with that. We also created a tool for tracking fires in Ukraine, because it's also very important to understand where is the active fires on the territory of Ukraine, and for tracking like how many fires in the Chernobyl exclusion zone, how it will affect the forest and everything else. There are the data is coming from the NASA website, from their system, but not everybody understand how to get there, how to read. Nobody understands English, so that's why we also created a layer on our map on Ukrainian, and we created a simple statistics so media are able to come and see amount of the active fires in Ukraine, so you don't have to calculate it manually. And we are showing it on a map, like dots only on Ukrainian territory. We have a plans before the full-scale war. We mostly launched the new system of permits for air emissions to digitalize the administrative procedure to get for enterprises to receive permits for air emissions. But the full-scale war started, and that project was put on hold. But we believe that right now the renewal of Ukraine and of enterprises already has to be started. And because many of people working online, the procedure will help. And our system, which we developed, will help a lot because it's already online and without any paperwork. We also have a plan to find some sponsorship and place radiation background monitoring sensors, online radiation monitoring sensors around Ukraine, to have more live data, not only manual measurements, but for live data. It will help to show to Ukrainians that everything is fine with the radiation background. There is no need for scare, for nerves, and just see and okay, everything great, let's go next. Our team is is right now around the whole world. Somebody is in Poland, in Montenegro, and some people are still in Ukraine, somebody in army, but we're working, we are continuing our projects. Some were changed, but we are working and trying to protect environment. Thank you. I try to be
thank you very
super
much.
fast.
Thank you very much. So, Motria, did you have some questions?
Oh, I wanted to thank everyone for participating, and yeah, I haven't done translating for a while. So,
yeah, you did a very good job.
Thank you. I'm very happy that everyone was able to join today. I asked 3 different organizations in case someone couldn't make it or had to drop out at the last second. So I'm happy everyone was able to participate today. So Shiro Dyakuyu, thanks everyone for joining. And just your tagline for this series is, it is personal.
It is personal.
It's personal for me because you know that I work with air monitoring. And so I've been talking to Pavla and others about this, trying to figure out if those environmental monitoring sites, those air sensors, is there a way to make the connection between the data that's still being collected and are they reflecting the fires and the attacks on the fuel depots? So there's like Pavla said, there's over 600 sensors around the country. And it's a challenge to document what date, what time, what exact location these different attacks and fires occurred. But I've started working with them, and I'm trying to see if this could be another piece of the puzzle to document the crimes. So we know that a fire occurred, and if we can make the connection to the air sensor that documented it, that might be useful information.
Sorry for stopping you. I don't have it on my laptop, but I have one of the screenshots, as you can see on my phone.
Yes.
It's not so perfect. So when one of the rocket hit the airport in Dnipro,
yeah.
It was a week ago. I found that later. It circles how the wave of the air pollution was going there. So I found that some stations captured the air emissions, and we saw spikes, huge spikes. So as the wind was blowing in the direction of these sensors from the airport, we saw bad air quality. So I think that's amazing confirmation for not only like visually, but also with the air quality.
Great. Okay, we will have a lot more to talk about with that, and hopefully I'll have some grad students to help on it. That's always a wonderful.
Great.
So Desmond, we've gone over, but do you?
So I'll take maybe a couple of questions. Dania, do you have a question? Dorina?
No, not yet. Not any particular. I think the host covered a lot of things that people had questions about.
Okay. Okay. Len?
Hey, good morning. Just a great presentation. First of all, I want to express my personal solidarity with the people of Ukraine. This is just an awful situation, and thank you for being here. It's a tremendous. With tremendous difficulty, I would say, to accomplish this, coming for you guys who are actually in Ukraine at this time. But my question, with respect to the data, and since you're using computer systems to collect and store some of this data, and with the ongoing potential by the Soviet Union, or by Russia rather, for compromising the computer systems, what protections do you have to ensure that the systems are not, don't suffer malware attacks, or you don't lose your information? Or so is there anything that ensures your protection of this data, not only now but in the future?
Oh, thank you for the
Pavlo.
Thank you for the great question. So the first day of the full-scale war. So I'm the technical leader of our NGO of Save Dnipro, and first day of the full-scale war, we removed from our system all the private information, because previously we had a feature, pollution complaint. So you are able in few clicks to generate a complaint about the pollution. You fill your private data, and just in few clicks you get the paper, the PDF, the document, which is ready to be sent to the authorities. And we understood that some information could be stolen, because Russia put a lot of money into the hacking of all the systems. So we completely removed all that information, and every single other information which could cause any issues also was removed. And right now we installed firewalls like Cloudflare. On the third day of the full-scale war, we found friends who are working in the security of the online systems. They helped us. They also did some penetration testing, and we are doing every single day backups of online backups. They're doing automatically on two different storages, which have read-only mode for 1 month. So it's like Google storage. They have when you're uploading, and you are not able to do anything in the next 30 days. So even if our system will be hacked and they will get the access to our storage, to our backup, they will not be able to do anything, because you are not able to delete, upload anything. So,
Okay.
so we put some attention to the security, but nobody protected in full.
Yeah, I understand that. Yeah, but thank you.
Okay, thank you so very much. Yeah, I think we had a very good in-depth perspective of how this war, unprovoked war, is affecting the environment. And the problem I see, just as I think is the case with genocide, is how are we going to enforce any of these things? Like, who is going to pay? I mean, obviously the answer should be Russia, but who is going to actually enforce that? That's one of the problems. Hopefully people are working on that, because, for Ukraine to carry the load or to try to do this on their own is not reasonable at all. So I think that was one of the things that what struck me in all of the presentations and in all of the ideas to have accountability is, after accountability, there should be enforcement, and I don't know how that's going to happen. Anyway, I would like to thank everyone, thank Motria, thank Danya, thank our speakers, guest speakers, all of them, for taking time out under very bad conditions to share with us. And we will keep you in our prayers, and we'll do what we can to help resolve this issue. And we will be praying for you, your families, and for the entire country of Ukraine. Thank you so very much.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Thank you. Stay safe, guys. Stay safe.
Yes. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Okay, bye.
Thank you, bye.
Thank you.
Okay, take care.
Be sure to visit our website at www.theenvironmentalfridays.com